Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Cabinet meeting. Nice to have you with us. I'm not aware of any, sorry, we do have apologies for absence, of course, from Councillor Rebecca Breeze. I think that's about it, probably. The rest of the Cabinet is present. Can I ask if any member of the Cabinet has any declaration of interest to make in this evening's agenda? No? Thank you. Minutes. We have minutes of our meeting, of our previous meeting, which was the 11th of October. Has everybody had a chance to have a look at those minutes? Any suggestions for amendments? Any accuracy? Thank you, Phil. That's a proposal. Can I confirm that's agreed? Is that agreed? Agreement in the minutes? Thank you. That's terrific. There. That's great. No particular chair's announcements. Just to note, I think we've got about 28 speaking slots booked this evening, which has become about the norm. But that's quite a lot. Obviously, 3 minutes each, plus a bit of walk to the table, walk back from the table stuff. We're well over an hour and a half's worth of speakers there. So just to urge you, if you hear your comments made, you may want to pass or just keep your comments to those that are additional. That would obviously be much appreciated. But we thank all of our speakers for coming along. Not aware of any urgent business, and I do know that the first main item, which is about place overview and scrutiny, Councillor Pinder Chowan is on her way. We've just had a call, and then Councillor Dermot Bambridge is going to make some comments. I wonder perhaps what we'll do. Would the Cabinet allow me to move on to item 7? We'll look at the corporate performance report. We've got some speakers on that, and then perhaps we'll come back to the early one. Is that okay? Yeah, let's do that then. Okay, so in terms of speakers, in a moment, we'll perhaps pick out a few highlights, but first of all, we welcome the following speakers on this, in this order. First will be Councillor Bearsworth, Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Purser, Councillor Stone, and then Councillor Randall. So, Sally, over to you.
Right, thank you, Chair. Looking at the corporate plan, I was a bit concerned. It said that priority to the 16 to 18 years, people in, is it full-time work or part-time work? I'd like to know if the answer to that. That wasn't made clear in the thing. Priority 3, no target, no description of the works that have been carried out by highways. People are very, very worried about pavements. We don't know what actually was the works involved. It just says so many projects, and we don't know whether they're meters of tarmac laid or potholes or pavements or curbs or anything. So I'd like a bit of a breakdown on that if it's possible. 4 new council houses completed this quarter. Yeah, and 60 properties needed snagging. That seems an awful lot of properties that need snagging. Is there a problem with the workforce? Are we using the right contractors? Just had a little bit of a worry over that. Visits to library. Well, that's great that people are using libraries, and they're very lucky to have a library close at hand. Hopefully Kingsthorpe will as well soon. Housing benefits, a bit of a shame really, because it's, mind you, that's a later report, so I won't go into that now. So I've kept it to very brief and read the report and found most of it informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally. Much appreciated. So our next speaker then, Rosie, over to you.
Thank you very much. Just a few questions about various details on the corporate report, which was very helpful to see. Very much welcome the increase in the number of older people remaining at home after 91 days after discharge. That's very positive. But as regards the new scorecard on complaints, I think it would be more meaningful to have the number of complaints as opposed to the I think it was the 3% that have gone to a stage 2, so that we've got some sort of context to that. So I'd welcome your comment on that. And on the rural prosperity details, would members be able to have sight of the addendum that's been submitted in addition to information already sent on that? I think it was sent in at the end of last month. There's no information, as far as I can see, on vacancies. Could we have a number on those? I know that's something that council seems to struggle on to have any precision about. And just on housing benefit, which I think was in this part of the report, can you confirm that while there is a significant delay in processing claims, that the interim payments are paid while they're being assessed? Because I was having a look on the shelter website, and that the information there is that in most cases some payments should be given within 2 weeks of a claim being sent in while it's being processed. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. Much appreciated. Bob.
Just got 3 points.
Thank
One,
you.
predictably, fly tipping remains a blight on our streets, certainly in the town. The figures bear out that it's getting worse at the moment, despite the work of neighbourhood wardens, ward councillors, campaigners, neighbours. I still think we haven't got this properly joined up. And I'm not sure that the enforcement figures, actually, how many of those are related just to the town centre rather than to the areas where we get fly tipping. So it might be useful to understand the number of enforcement actions taken out of the central area. I still think we need more joined up thinking about fly tipping. I think we have to just pick up the issue of social housing. Small numbers here. I know there are numbers in the pipeline and I understand all that, but I think we kind of are counting in tens when we need to be counting in hundreds. And we've got 4,000 people on the waiting list across the district. It's a big issue for this authority, I think. So that's a big picture issue. And just to finally recognise the work of the teams working, resettling families from Ukraine and Afghanistan. It's some really good work gone in this district according to that. And I think we ought to recognise the kind of hard ongoing work that's going on among officers to do that. And I think that's much appreciated by ward councillors. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for your points, Bob. And echo what you say about the resettlement team that we've got. So do a fantastic job. 2 more councillors. Next was Councillor Stone. Danielle.
Lovely, thank you. I've got several questions. Thank you very much. The first one is about the resettlement scheme, actually. We're given the figures for how many people, but it would be useful to know how many households. And that one of the reasons for that is because resettlement's a funny word. So we haven't actually resettled many people at all. We've only got 1 permanent resettlement, haven't we? And we promised that we would have 10 households resettled. So I'd just like a bit of an update on that. And I do want to make sure there is an understanding here that Ukrainian households are presenting to the Hope Centre as homeless. So we need to figure out what's happening there and what could be done about it. I'm terribly pleased to see we've got so many apprenticeships. But I'd quite like to know how that compares with other authorities, because unless we know that, we can't really tell if we're doing well or badly. It seems good to me. But I'm also curious about how many of those apprenticeships are for existing employees, because I know sometimes the apprenticeship scheme is used to help existing employees acquire new skills or further their careers. So I'd like to know how many new entrants we've got onto that scheme. And what happens when their apprenticeship is successful and over? Are we going to keep any? Are we going to make sure they move into work? I'm really interested in the economy team and the work they're doing. but I'd like more information. If they're helping people match their skills with jobs, I'd quite like to know what kind of jobs they are. I'm having terrible experiences at the moment watching young people I know going into warehousing. I took some young people into a workplace the other day, and we walked straight into a call centre personed by very young people. I came out and nearly cried because those are not the kind of jobs we are educating our children for. If they're holiday jobs or interim jobs or, you know, in between jobs, fine. But we need jobs of quality with good pay and good career prospects. So I'm anxious about that. With that level of fly tipping, I really think we ought to know how much it's costing. How much is it costing to clear 8,115 fly tips? I'd really like to know that. I'm really anxious about the figures presenting for children's, and I'm really grateful we've got the comparison with statistical neighbours, the region and national. And for me, it highlights the job that we've got to do in the council to support the Children's Trust, because what they are needing is clearly more services and opportunities for families. I'd like to suggest in terms of NEET that we send that to scrutiny. I'm not happy with what's going on with our NEET children and our NEET service. It's been cut to the bone. And I think we need to ask scrutiny to have a look at that. And can I just say a couple of other things, and I'm running out of time, Chair, with your indulgence. At planning last night, it became really clear again that we're being held over a barrel by our 5-year land supply inadequacies, which means that developers are having a bit of a field day and not helping us in terms of providing affordable homes or money for structural services.
We must finish there. We're sort of 4
Can
minutes.
I-
And a
can
lot
I
of these
just
things
say-
are not really key performance indicator things. Planning, we have a lot of
I
sorts
just
out on
wanted to
planning.
raise a
Cost of fly tipping is elsewhere.
safety.
But
if
it can't
that's
be that important because you didn't in the first 3 minutes, Danielle. That's
Okay.
always my concern.
Okay, thank you.
Forgive me. Let's take our last speaker, Wendy. Wendy, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I'll
Thanks,
be very brief. It's a very detailed report and we've made some good progress in quite a few areas. There are just a few I'd just like to touch on. There's one on the council homes to be built. It does say that there was 4 to be built, but there were 60 properties that were delayed until October due to snagging issues, and we're now in December. So I just wonder whether those are now completed and ready for people to move in. So it's just a, you know, an update on that one. And the other one that I've found that it just stood out to me a lot is the amount of debt that is overdue by 90 days plus, which now stands at 24.5 million, up nearly 5 million than what it was in June. And I just wondered, you know, what are we doing to recover that, you know, to recover that debt? Because that seems to be a huge amount of money, you know, that we need to be getting in. And the only other thing that maybe you'll explain this because I just couldn't quite understand it, but when we're in Q2, so on a collection rate, I would have thought that if you'd collected all your collection rate in on Q2, you would have hit 50% of those payments. And where they're like 57, does that mean people have paid in front, or is that mean just not understanding that properly? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I think quickly on that one, it's probably where people pay over 10 rather than 12 months, I would imagine. But it might be that Malcolm will add something to that, but that's first sort of reaction, Wendy. Okay, thank you. So quite a few bits to pick there. Adam, I know you wanted to come in most particularly on the homes, 60 homes. Which, yeah.
Yeah, thank you to the members who have identified the issue around the snagging issues. The delays were in fact relatively minor. That it was those snagging issues were mostly, if not entirely, confined to Beaumont House, which was due to be completed at the end of September. There was a very minor delay that just shifted it into October for completion, which means that it missed out being included in the Q2 figures and will be reflected in the Q3 figures. Important to note that that's another 60 properties, another 60 units of housing, which is a decent contribution towards the annual target. We want to go a lot further. We're working with MPH constantly to try and improve this at the pace of delivery. We are also about to implement a new governance framework in tandem with MPH, and we're hopeful that that will improve the pace of delivery and our model of working with them.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. They're beautiful homes at Beaumont House, but you don't take them on until you're ready, do you? So there's minor things, kitchen drawers or whatever, we get them right. But they have now completed and spilled over into, of course, the most recent quarter. A couple of other people coming in to comment. I think, Matt, I saw your hands up first.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Chair. There was no specific questions pertaining to my area really there, but I just wanted to highlight some of the performance in public health, which doesn't really always get that much attention. Things like breastfeeding rate at 6 to 8 weeks, we remain above the national average for that, which is good. School-aged children who receive weight management advice and support, there's good performance there as well. Mothers known to be smokers at the time of delivery, we stand in the higher end of the performance there of the national average, albeit we can always strive to do better. Smoking quit rate at 4 weeks, we're above the national average there as well. So there's some decent steady performance in there, especially around infants and young children, also around the birth visit data and infants that received a 6 to 8 week review by the time they were 8 weeks. So just some good steady progress I thought I'd highlight, as opposed to some of the adult social care measures, which again, we're performing relatively well on. But with all of this, we can always strive to do better. Thank you, Chair.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matt. A couple of others coming in. Mike, I think you were next. Over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, just to pick up on a couple of points, Councillor Humphreys first. Customer satisfaction. This is a really good stat at the moment, actually. We're at 90.1%. So what above 90% customer satisfaction. Unavoidable is at 83%, which is very good as well. Why I think those are particularly good at the moment is think about the type of calls our agents are taking and some of the complexities of the issues that they're dealing with, particularly as we run into this time of year when people are struggling out there. So some really positive noise there. Councillor Humphreys has had a suggestion about including the number of complaints rather than a percentage, and that's relatively easy to do. We can amend that in future reports. She mentioned also number of vacancies. We don't typically like to track it on a single day because of the sheer number of people that we employ. The stat that I prefer to look at is the staff turnover, which is at 15.1% and is well within that sort of recommended boundary of around 14 to 18 of having a healthy staff turnover. What we're actually doing at the moment is clearing down a lot of the old vacancies through the system. So the aim is to actually be at 0 vacancies come 31st of December. And then we'll follow a new process moving forward, make it a bit easier to track individual vacancies. But again, we won't be particularly keen on handing out a given number on a given day, because I think it's the trends that are much more important than given numbers. Lastly, Councillor Stone, I'll try not to be drawn about your cheap pop on the warehousing industry. Please have a think about all the people in that industry that are working very hard. But I will give you some good news, which is that our apprenticeship target is above the national target at the moment.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mike. Just to come back on that proportion of complaints escalated, although we've got 3.6% as the KPI, below that it does say a total of 28 complaints have been escalated in the year. So I think that's the number we're after there, isn't it? Or was there some other number? Yeah, so the narrative, as often does, the narrative answers that point, 28. And I think on that one also, the next quarter, we're going to introduce a new KPI, which is the number of complaints escalated and upheld. So I think we're really getting into the detail of that one even more. Thanks, Mike. Fiona, you were going to come in, I think.
Thank you. I just wanted to have some discussion on the NEAT figures, which does have a seasonal fluctuation. So I'm just going to pass to Stuart so he can explain that to you.
Thank you, councillor Baker. So firstly, councillor Beardsworth, we don't differentiate between full and part-time employment in the calculation of those figures. If you look on the graph within the pack, you'll see that it starts to increase as we get towards July. What we typically see is obviously that's the time at which 16-year-olds leave school, and we have a bit of an increase through to September when we start to see them coming back down. What will be helpful, I think, is to depict what we've seen from an NCC perspective over previous years to get a sense as to whether we're following the same trajectory or not.
Jolly good. Thank you. Anything else? David, did you want to make some comments perhaps on resettlement, that sort of thing, fly tipping maybe?
Yeah, so noted the recognition for resettlement work. I think it's it wants recognising every opportunity, and I'm pleased that it's been mentioned this evening, and we should continue to mention it. With regard to fly tipping, we've just launched the fly tipping charter, so we've got an increase in activity further to looking for prosecutions, etc., and I think the charter itself is that joined up thinking that you're looking for. So but happy to talk outside of this further with you on this. You know my position on this. I'll try and help where I can.
Thank you, David. Any other comments? Phil, you're going to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The councillor Beardsworth asked for a breakdown with regard to highway defects and things. I haven't got that to hand. We have to remember that this is this quarter covers the period of the old contract, and moving forward we will be monitoring against the new contract. So scrutiny will be playing a greater role in that, and they will be able to, of course, drill down into the issues that you're talking about. So I think that will probably resolve itself there. Fly tipping, it has gone up 155 more we've cleared in this quarter as opposed to the one before. As my colleague says, we've got the charter and a lot of work been going on around that. Enforcement is coming in very soon, and you know, it's pleasing to see that you know, the number of fixed penalty notices, and I congratulate our wardens, as I'm sure my colleague does, on achieving that number. With regard, Danielle asked the cost of clearing fly tips. Well, it's all part of the contract, so it's part of the overall contract price. And don't forget, of course, there's a contract in Northampton, and it's direct labour in South Northampton area. And of course, you've got Norse dealing within Daventry, so it would be very difficult to bring together all those particular costs. And I don't think it would be be an effective use of resources to do that. But if we can give a ballpark figure, we will. But you know, it's a shame they're going up. Yes, we want them to come down, but as the performance states, we are clearing them, and that's the most important thing. It's a shame we have to do it, but we do.
Thank you very much. Any further comments to make? Malcolm.
Yeah, I'll comment on Wendy's comments on debt. I think that's quite an important one. Take the issue of debt. I take it extremely seriously. It's one of the quickest ways to knock our bottom line that I know. And ever since I've been involved with the finance, both the NCC and here, I always look very carefully at the outstanding debt. And the important thing, the overwhelmingly important thing, in my opinion, is it good debt? Is it collectible? And secondly, once you've got yourself comfortable with that, is right now, how quickly can we collect it? Which is the point that you made, Wendy, and it's quite a good one. Now, that particular thing was a bit of a phenomena, oddly enough, in that normally we invoice about 30 million pounds a month, and in April and May, both those months, we went in excess of 60, and that in fact has worked through. Doesn't take away from the fact we're neglecting it, but that's why that's inflated. So I thought you'd like to know those details. If you want to go look in the detail at it, then I'd be absolutely delighted to run through it. If you stay awake long enough, I'll go through it with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Anybody want to make any further comments on any of the KPIs, or is there anything else to sweep up on the questions? No. Okay, in which case, thank you. The recommendations, as always, are at section 3, which is to note the content covering the second quarter's performance. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement? Is that agreed? Thank you. Right, let's jump back to item 6. We welcome Pinder, Councillor Chairman. Nice to have you with us, who's done a huge amount of work on the scrutiny work, which is the tree policy and strategy. So I think first of all, you're going to introduce it, and then there was just a couple of words to follow from the chair of the committee, Dermot, I think. But Pinder, welcome. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you actually, because this agenda item was actually for a previous cabinet meeting. Obviously, one was in intensive care, so I do appreciate the flexibility on moving it to this meeting. It's been, we've had quite a lot of input into this policy paper. We've had 7 councillors that worked quite diligently across 6 months to try and put all of this together. And it's actually been quite enjoyable working with it, and I've learnt so much by doing it. So we've had various groups such as the Woodland Trust, Save Our Street Trees, Garden Organic. We've had the Danny Moody from NCALC as well, who's paid quite a bit of attention to this paper and the consultation that we had. So we had a 6-week public consultation inviting residents to feed into this policy, as well as parish councils. We took into consideration the rural, the urban areas, open areas, and built up areas as well, recognizing that they've all got different needs. And obviously bringing together 4 council policies, which were all different with variations and so on. So what we did was take a holistic approach to those policies and look for something that would encompass the whole of West Northants and the different areas that we have. Some of the areas we've put together some recommendations on this paper. There's quite a few in here, including additional investment that's needed to ensure that we have got all the maintenance, all of the investment that we need in this area as well to maintain trees, and also to ensure that we've got the right trees in the right place. We try to get the full coverage from the views of residents who have got trees growing too closely to their homes, the impacts that's had on them, and also looking at how we can also invest in planting more trees and the benefits that has from a health perspective on climate change, as well as air quality as well. Very proud to also say that we've been working quite closely with the Queen's Green Canopy project, which has really enthused communities as well into planting more trees as well, which will continue till March as well. And those trees also will get recorded as part of the trees that West Northamptonshire are planting as well. One of the key recommendations as well that I wanted to highlight was the Tree Strategy and Projects Officer. It's been on recruitment for quite some time. I understand there are some challenges around that and the salary, which we'd like to highlight and say actually it's quite a key role, and we do feel that needs some investing in. Yeah, so if there's any other questions, I know there's so much in here, so I'm not going to go through each individual thing, but if there is any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pinder. Does anybody want to raise any questions while Pinder's here? Is there any comments at all? Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, Pinder, thank you ever so much to you and everybody involved with this piece of work. It's fantastic. We're very, very grateful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Dermot, you were going to make a couple of comments, I think. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say this was our very first major piece of work, and our first task and finish group in the place overview and scrutiny committee. And the amount of work gone into it, I think, is exemplary. The depth and the width of it, I think, has surprised everyone, and I guess particularly those involved in the working party that have done it. And it's a large piece of work, but hopefully will now turn into a policy that will be something outstanding, because I think there's coverage of that isn't seen in other pieces of work we've seen from other authorities. And it's particularly pertinent at the moment, as we know, particularly with its relationship to air quality and many, many other environmental aspects. I just wanted to publicly thank Pinda for her work as chair and the members of that task and finish group for the hours they put in on this and the depths they've gone to get all that information together and speak to various people and bodies. That's all I wanted to say. Chair,
Thank
if
you.
that's all right.
Thank you very much, Dermot. And thank you for your committee and the particular group considering it. We do actually, I didn't mention before, if Phil wants to make some comments, we've also got actually 4 speakers registered, Councillor Beardsworth, Humphreys, Purser and Roberts on this. So perhaps as it's your area, Phil, you may have some comments, but we'll bring in our speakers first. I think, shall we welcome Councillor Beardsworth first? Sally, over to you.
Can I say, Chair, that this report actually demonstrates thoroughly how good scrutiny can be. I think that's an excellent piece of work that's been done. It's so thorough and so informative. And also, it actually points out the problems we've had in the past, which I think is always something, I know people don't want to look at the past, but we must learn from mistakes in the past. And we really must replace trees that die. We must replace trees or pollard them that are causing problems. We need to do different things. It needs a whole holistic approach to it. And I think reading the report, and I don't want to go on at length because it's for everybody to read, but I've talked to several people about it. And I think I would recommend the gold standard for you to adopt, because I think if we can catch up on some of the trees that we've lost from avenues, from parks, from various other places, and to put the right trees in the right place. That was the mistake of the Eastern District. They were put forest trees in there that should never have been put there, and they were supposed to be thinned, but unfortunately, the chap who did it, who was a councillor, Mr. Councillor Smith, if everybody remembers him, and he didn't actually tell people that you were supposed to thin these down as they got too big. And they've caused a lot of problems. So it's the right tree in the right place. And some of our avenues are sadly missing lots of trees. Like one in adjacent to my ward is Clarence Avenue. And that used to have beautiful flowering cherries all the way down it. And so many of them are missing, are all gone now. It's such a shame. And it was beautiful when it was May time. And also the environment is not just to look at trees, but what they do in the what they do to the environment to clean the air, to take off the carbon monoxide from cars. We really have to look at that in a big way. So thank you for everybody who's done this report. It really is a standard alone report. And I think it's done an awful lot of good, and I hope the recommendations will be accepted by this cabinet.
Thank you very much, Sally. Councillor Humphreys, Rosie.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to echo what Councillor Beardsworth has said as regards adding my thanks to this very welcome, very important piece of work, and thank you to everyone involved in it. And I also hope that you will agree that the gold standard is the one to go for. Just a couple of points. It mentions ancient woodland, and Councillor we've heard about the involvement of the Woodland Trust. They have a compiling an inventory of ancient trees, and if you go on their website, there are a number in the West Northants area, but I think they've been put there by individuals. So I hope that's something that that will be added by the tree officer as and when they are in post. Now, as regards that, the report recommends that the strategy is completed no later than March, and will need to require a consultant. I hope that that's going to be enough time to do what's necessary to do justice to the report and reflect it in the strategy rather than something that might be picked off the shelf by a consultant. As regards woodlands and the short walking distance for residents, which is recommended to woodlands, will that distance be aligned perhaps with our active travel strategy? I mean, 2 miles is generally the sort of standard walking, cycling distance to amenities. So I'd be interested to know what's decided on that. And just finally, well, actually a couple of things. I don't know whether other strategies include a section on dealing with tree diseases, because ash dieback is something that's well, we can see all over West Northamptonshire. I think, well, certainly my part of West Northamptonshire has a huge number of ashes, most of which are okay at the moment, but, you know, were they all to go, that would significantly change the landscape. And I don't know whether it's appropriate to include something about how an authority will deal with significant tree disease if that continues or a new one comes about. And as regards replacing trees in conservation areas, I think at the moment there's not a very systematic way of ensuring that trees are replaced. So could we tighten up that particular process either in the strategy or right now? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Next, we have Councillor Purser. Bob.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is an excellent report. The task is, how do we get to a gold standard? That's got to be the challenge for us. Councillor Duffy, if she was here from the Talavera point of view, and she was part of the group. The issue, the reason why the density of trees is great in that area was a mitigation for the increased density of housing that was put in there. So that was an active decision made at the time that they were going to increase the density of housing and therefore put more trees in. And of course, it was a major activity of the original Development Corporation that was then passed on to the Borough Council and hence to here. So we do have a legacy obligation to maintain those trees. And I think it's something that's drifted back over recent years. And we really, for the benefit of the residents of those areas, those trees need to be properly maintained and properly pollarded where appropriate. Really, that's the point I wanted to make, that the Development Corporation made policy decisions, and we have to honour the obligations that we have from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bob. Final speaker is Councillor Roberts. Emma, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I was on the Task and Finish group. It was a pleasure to be part of it, and I want to place special thanks to the officers that were allocated to the Task and Finish group, because not only did they write an excellent report, but they also consulted with us members of the Task and Finish group on its content, and we went backwards and forwards many times, not always agreeing on its content, which was really useful. My concern, and I'd rather have heard Councillor Larratt speak before I spoke, if I'm honest, because my concern is that you're not going to accept the recommendations in the report, or indeed you're going to move the timelines. And the reason that concerns me is because most of the recommendations in the report are the same as were part of the motion that was passed at the Borough Council, which as a council, we also passed a motion to adopt those historic motions and implement them and put them into play. So we could have been a lot further down the line on this. We haven't carried out that or enacted that historic motion yet. The council's climate and green objectives relate directly to having strategies like this, long-term thorough strategies that allow us to take action. I worry that if we don't follow the recommendations and we don't have a proper tree policy and strategy in place, then the corporate report can monitor 5 trees that we've planted on our land, but it'll ignore 1,700 trees that we felled to build a bypass on private land. If we don't look at the overall picture with a proper tree policy and strategy and quickly, then we aren't doing our climate and green agenda objectives well at all. So I hope that Councillor Larratt's not going to push anything back in the recommendations and that Cabinet is going to approve the recommendations as said. Another point I'd like to make is around the employment of a tree officer. right very early on in the task and finish group stages, we talked about the grading and the recommendations for this. We said immediately when the advert went out that the salary wasn't sufficient and it wasn't commensurate of other roles out there. So I think we could have done some work on this already, and I hope that more work has gone on in the background that I'm unaware of on that. I love the report. It was brilliant. Thank you to Pinder for chairing the group. It was excellent. Just on Councillor Humphrey's point on Ash Dieback very quickly, we visited a site, Councillor Fowler and myself, and looked at the Ash Dieback situation in a particular area of her ward. And there is in the main report some details around Ash Dieback. So it was definitely considered by the task and finish group. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Emma. It's an interesting one because the KPI thing covers the number of trees planted. It's quite an interesting issue about how you find out about trees across the whole of West Northamptonshire. You hear of occasional ones, and I think you're referring perhaps to Halston Firs, are you, with the, yeah, okay. And it's quite difficult other than planning applications where we may get information on trees. I think it's fairly limited. It would be good, it would be right to have that fuller picture. Not quite sure if we've cracked how yet. Phil, did you want to make comments on?
Well, just on that point, I think there is a bit of uncertainty as to the accuracy of the figures in the performance report, because there may well be some trees that should have been counted that haven't. So I believe that's being looked at as we speak. But moving on to this report, I mean, can I thank Pinder? I agree with everything Dermot said, and it's a major piece of work. A lot of hard work has gone in and effort, and we've ended up with a comprehensive, detailed report that addresses both rural and urban issues. And I'd like not just to thank Pinder for her efforts in getting this to where it is, but all the members of the working group and the partners who work so well with the group as well, and engaged parish councils, you know, the various organisations, you know, such as the street tree people. Really good effort, and very inclusive, and getting the information from the right people. And I can't remember who it was it Sally Bearsworth who said it's a great example of good scrutiny? It is. That's absolutely right. And people have said it's all about the right tree in the right place. Well, of course it is. That's exactly what it's about. And you know, we've seen in both rural and urban areas the problems of trees that are in the wrong place and the problems that they cause. So we end up with residents, as Pinder and I know, taking matters into their own hands. I mean, I don't like being woken up on New Year's Day by a constituent phoning me to tell me that there's somebody walking around a park, a local park, with a chainsaw cutting down trees. And if we don't maintain the trees, if we don't respond to residents' needs, we're going to see more and more of that. And that's the last thing we want to see, trees decimated by local residents. We need to work with residents, and I think this report gives us the opportunity to do that, to work with them and to meet their needs. And I don't think, you know, Pinder now represents East Hunsbury, which I used to represent, and I had to say that trees, whether it was highway trees, park trees, or whatever, were one of the major issues in my inbox. And I think, you know, Emma Roberts sort of talked about the why we're not further on. I think what we need, yes, there are historic motions and things like that, but we've got to have a cohesive report, a cohesive policy that covers the whole of West Northamptonshire and incorporates all sorts of trees on this authority's land, whether it's highways, trees in our parks, or open spaces, or whatever, and also the trees in rural areas. So, you know, there's we must have that policy and work to that policy, and that's the important aspect. So we're consistent across West Northamptonshire in both rural and urban areas. So I think, you know, it is an excellent piece of work. I welcome the recommendations. I think, as Sally said, we need a holistic approach, quite right. And I think that's something that falls out of this report. You know, the Woodland Trust, yes, will work with all the partners who were engaged with Save Our Street Trees, the Woodland Trust. There's a lot of work to do with them moving forward, and we're working with them all the time anyway. And a lot of trees that have been planted and are being planted in consultation with them. Again, to say that you know, that we get the right tree in the right place. Councillor Purser, yeah, very good points. And yes, we do have a historic responsibility to maintain these trees. I'm particularly pleased, and he mentioned it, and I'm pleased that the report recommends the idea of pollarding, because that's something that hasn't been done for a long, long time, and could go a long way to meeting the needs of residents in urban areas and elsewhere. So I think, Chair, it's an excellent report. I'm supportive of the recommendations. I am mindful, though, of the timescale. I think Councillor Humphreys raised this, to get the policy in place. I think it says in the recommendations, is it March next year? Well, that's not a long time to actually be able to do this comprehensive piece of work and get a full and effective policy, taking into account all the recommendations that are in here. So I think that is probably likely to be extended, but I can't promise that March. As much as we would all like it and as much as we all want it, we've got to be realistic, we've got to be practical, we've got to make sure that we get a policy that works for West Northampton and can deliver for the residents of West Northampton. And we can easily rush into these things and make rash decisions, but let's get it right. It's a one and only opportunity to produce the right document. So on that note, Chair, I think I've said enough and support the recommendations.
Thank you, Phil. Adam, you're going to make some comments.
Thank you, Chairman. And yeah, I appreciate this report coming from scrutiny. I think it's an excellent piece of work. There's a good balance here between the needs of the urban and the rural areas. There are just a couple of questions that spring to my mind. The first is on how any new policy on trees would affect the status of trees on NPH land and the responsibilities that currently fall upon tenants moving forward. You know, would those come back to the council? Where do the various responsibilities look to lie in the future? Secondly, my eyes drawn to the first paragraph of text on page 20, where it says that the costs for Northampton. It goes on to say that given the intensity of work required in Northampton compared to other parts of West Northamptonshire, it would probably be reasonable to add 25% to the increase in costs. Now, if you can cover the whole of Daventry, the whole of Towcester, the whole of Brackley, and the rest of the rural area for only 25% more for that base cost, I think you're doing really, really, really well. I'd be interested to know how much examination of that assumption has taken place before coming to that calculation, because I'm very worried that we won't be able to meet the outline costs presented in the paper as they are today. So that needs to be crystallised as we move forward. But otherwise, an excellent report, and I really hope that we can get there in terms of delivering the policy priorities that are outlined in the paper.
Thanks, Adam. Did you want to make some further comment, Phil, on that?
Well, as far as NPH land is concerned, I would hope that we could work in partnership with NPH. Because not only have you got NPH land and West Northamptonshire Council land, you've got that, what is it, retained land as well, which nobody seems to really know who's responsible for what. And I would really hope that's incorporated as well. So, you know, yes, we'll work with the NPH, and we'll obviously have to address the other issue of this retained land that this council owns or should have gone to NPH. So with regard to costings, yeah, I mean, we do need to examine them in detail in light of the policy, in light of what the issues within this report, and that will roll out as we develop the strategy. I think it's fair to say that a lot of money has already been invested in Northampton. £100,000 a year extra was being put in, although that didn't encompass highways trees, because highways at the time wouldn't allow us to work on them. But yeah, so a lot of work has been done in Northampton, but there's still more to do, as there is across West Northamptonshire. But those costings will drop out as we go forward.
Okay, jolly good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your to our speakers, and thank you everybody for their contribution. Now, on a scrutiny report like this, it's a significant piece of work, lots of recommendations. So unlike in all the rest of the reports, we wouldn't normally vote to accept all recommendations because we need to spend some time looking at them. The onus then is on Phil, along with his colleagues, officers, to get back to scrutiny with a clear action plan, comments on any that we're going to have difficulty with, and so on. And clearly on this one, it's a demanding timescale. So I think we need to get back fairly quickly with a more realistic timescale and a plan of how we plan to tackle this. Did you want to comment on
Absolutely,
that,
Chair.
Stuart?
That was, I should have said that at the end of when I spoke. Yes, as I say, I support all the recommendations. We'll take them away and look at them practically as to how we're going to get them enacted and into a policy, and the timescale we can do that and how we're going to fund that. So I think that's the way forward. Note them, let's move forward and come back with the detail as soon as we possibly can.
Fantastic. Thanks, Phil. You were going to comment, Stuart, I think, but did Phil cover what you were going to say? Yeah, brilliant.
With the timescales and the detail that sits behind all of that, and make sure that all the way through the process, scrutiny is kept up to date and informed and is part of that process as well. So
fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart, and thank you again, everybody.
As I said, Chairman, members, this is something close to members' hearts, and a number of members I get coming to me about trees and let's get this policy is quite significant. So believe me, I want to get it in place as soon as we possibly can as well. So
thank you very much. Moves us on to item 8. This is the draft integrated care Northamptonshire Live Your Life Best Life strategy. This is with Matt first, though we have some speakers. On this report, they are as follows: Councillor Beardsworth, Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Roberts, Councillor Stone and Councillor Randall. So Sally, over to you initially.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I've only just read the strategy because it wasn't sent to me with my papers. It was to follow. So I've only been reading it briefly now. And there's nothing you can argue in it. There's nothing you can say that this shouldn't be happening. And I'm sorry to say, I've read a lot of reports like this in the past, where it's the sort of, this is what we want to achieve, but it's basically, I want to see outcomes from it rather than the strategy. So I'm pleased the strategy is there. And it says all the things you want it to say, but you really want to see how that strategy is going to impact on the work we deliver and the outcomes we get from it. I'm very upset tonight, obviously, that the women's age, the elderly women's age is 82 point something, and it's not as good as the same as the rest of England. So I'm pretty upset about that. So I haven't got long to go. So basically, it's a sort of strategy you could probably send to Harry and Meghan to see if we could help sort out their problems as well. But it's really is. It's a good wish list. I just want to see the outcomes that come from it, and it's a good starting point. Thank you, Chair. And I don't want to be glib, but it is near Christmas.
Thank you, Sally. Jolly good. Councillor Humphreys, Rosie.
Thank you. I haven't had a chance to share with my colleague Sally that I attended the first meeting of the Daventry and South Northants Wellbeing Forum today, where there was a presentation on the strategy, and it was very encouraging to see so many representatives from primary care, the social prescribing, the Children's Trust, the police, councillors and many officers there as well. And to reassure Sally, there are outcomes attached to the strategy. So I'm feeling a little more optimistic about this. As Sally says, there's nothing you can argue with the 10 ambitions. But having said that, a number of them, it seemed to me, are going to require serious funding, and I'm not sure where that's going to come from. So I would think that it's quick wins that are going to be what are needed to really make things get off the ground. But there are what is exciting is that the data on attached to the proposed local area partnerships do seem to drill down to what is really needed in particular localities. And I've noticed in the ward in the villages surrounding in the proposed Brixworth local area partnership, connectivity is something that is a deprivation, that residents can't get to the job centre, secondary school, employment, etc., because there's no bus. And I do hope that the current bus review that's being undertaken is going to be public consulted on, I think, next year, will link up to the needs in identified through this integrated care system, because that seemed to me to be an opportunity to, to be truly holistic. So I think that's really what the main point I want to say. But in addition, the part about the ambition for everyone to have the opportunity to be fit, well and independent, have access to green space, appropriate housing, etc. I'm really pleased to see that arts and cultural activities are also included in that, because so often that is an afterthought. And as I think we all know, cultural, artistic entertainment is a need, and there's so many well-being benefits, educational, economic. So I think that's a positive inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosie. Councillor Roberts, Emma.
Thank you, Chair. It's a really lovely report, as in well-presented report. It's really easy to digest and lots of detail. So thank you for those responsible for that. I say I like, but I don't really mean that. I actually like the content. I'm disappointed at the content, but I like the admission of the content at page 17, that we're likely to see further real terms reduction in public sector funding. I never envy officers or cabinet members who have to produce reports around these strategies, because let's face it, this is a grossly underfunded area and has been grossly underfunded nationally for years. They're being asked to deliver less, and you're kind of damned, less for more, sorry, and damned if you do, or you're damned if you don't, based on processes. For me, we can't allow this strategy or any strategy around this area to become a way of allowing privatisation through the back door. I asked the question recently about discussions around a single children's trust, and I wonder whether we can carry on with these. I know it's not a children's report, bear with me. We can carry on with these west and north kind of two-pronged approach reports. There's lots of them where it's the west are doing this and the north are doing this, and how do we do that? Because I'm not sure it's sustainable, given we seem to be taking quite a different avenue and route to our partners in the north. So just wonder if that's is sustainable. There's a point on access to best available education and learning, and there is I'm really pleased there's a focus on SEND in there, but there's no recognition in it for alternative provision. And the elective home education figures are referred to as high, but there's no explanation in there as to what those figures are or why that is the case. If we don't understand it, it's difficult to see how we'd implement a strategy that actually fixes that. On employment that keeps people and families out of poverty, I was really disappointed that there isn't a single reference to the real living wage, because the anti-poverty strategy references that very specifically. It doesn't talk about a national living wage, a minimum wage or anything. It talks about the real living wage. It's a prime example of where our anti-poverty strategy, and we've got a great report that does it later on the agenda, but our anti-poverty commitments are not feeding into our other strategies. I think page 28 is not ambitious. It doesn't deal with pay or work being the route out of poverty at all. Page 33, we've got access to health and social care when they need it. That's one of the kind of ambitions. My worry was really about out of hours access and crisis management. I had the privilege, I would say, because it was a privilege, to help support a young lady this last month who was in crisis in the Guildhall with the Director of Adults. And that out of hours crisis situation, if I'd have been on my own or hadn't had that support around me, I don't know what the circumstances would have been for that young lady, to be fair. So I'm not sure the strategy helps us address that at the moment, but I thought the report and its content were great. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next, Councillor Stone, Danielle.
Thank you. I really liked reading this report, but I was anxious all the time about how deliverable it's going to be in terms of resourcing. I'm really pleased the emphasis is on partnerships and a perception of how partnerships can be really strong with not, you know, us leading, but not dominating. I think that's the way I'm reading it. There's a couple of things that I think are really important for us to strengthen. I don't think diversity is just there to be celebrated. I think it should be used as a strength. So we've got lots and lots of different languages spoken in West Northants. I think that is a huge selling point for inward investment. And one of the things that I would like to see in the future is a languages policy to accompany our employment and economic policy, because I think the gifts that people bring into the local authority area with them need to be recognised. And I think there's huge potential in our diverse communities for being really entrepreneurial and developing new businesses of all sorts, but making a big contribution to how we shape the economy. And that would be my other point, really, that I don't think we can go on limping along accepting how our world is being shaped by the private sector and market forces. I think we need to see ourselves as much more active than that, and we ought to be helping shape what goes on. And I feel that really strongly in terms of where our young people are ending up. I think with the voluntary sector, I'm really pleased to see an acknowledgement of the huge impact that they can make, but there's a worry, isn't there? Because the voluntary sector is completely under-resourced. In my view, we need to be helping build the voluntary sector, making the voluntary sector a lot more robust than it is. And we ought to have a view that that's how we build social capital. So I would like to see that as an addition in the framework that we've got here. And the other thing I'm very mindful of is this report talks about schools and schools and universities, but misses out colleges, or I've missed it. It's very striking to me that the university plays a very active public role and a very active role with the communities. I don't see the colleges doing that, but there's a huge potential there for them to come out of the colleges and do a lot more work with it and within the community. So I'd like to see that happen. In all the reports, Chair, that we're getting, we no longer have equalities impact assessments. We have something called community impacts. I don't think that's sufficient. I think when we're looking at the detail of things, we need to know who we're talking about. We need to know the age, the ethnicity, the gender. We need all of that information. So I hope we can begin to put that back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Last speaker is Councillor Randall. Wendy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. A very well put together report, made a really interesting reading. But I've said at the committees before, it looks lovely on paper, but it's actually how we're going to achieve that. And a lot of those things are through underfunding. So starting off, there was the best start in life, risk of birth complications and poor health. I was out with the midwives in the town centre a few weeks ago, and they were telling me that they are in complete crisis, that to work safely, they needed 18 midwives and there was 8. And you've got women giving birth without a midwife in the room. Now, that really was, you know, I could not believe that, but they're saying that this is how bad things have got. So there's a national shortage, you know, of midwives, GPs, doctors, you know, every profession, we've got a national shortage. So I think, you know, that we are in an unsafe environment, and I don't know how we're going to fix that. SEND is a concern with many children being homeschooled because local school settings aren't suitable or safe for them. And then they feel abandoned once their children aren't accessing a school. Some of them don't seem to get any follow-up work at all, and they're just left in crisis at home. I think we need far more activities that are free, like, you know, bike tracks and parks that are suitable for all ages. You often go to parks and there's nothing really much there for teenagers. Then they just hang around, they're vulnerable, get into trouble. You know, they get, you know, coerced into drug running and all sorts of things. So I think, you know, that we really need to think outside the box when we're designing parks. Mental well-being in young people is increasing, and that's a major concern. Housing is so expensive that so many of them now are just renting a room, which is no good for anybody's mental health. Employment, that's another one. Now, a lot in these warehouses, that the warehouses just use agencies. So I know many people that they don't get regular work. They don't get work for 5 days. The agency will just phone them and say, we haven't got any work for you today. So that's you know, we need permanent jobs, agencies like that, they're actually based inside the warehouses. It's just terrible for people. Violent offences is higher than the national average. Domestic abuse is increasing year on year. That's something, obviously, I think more is a police issue, and I think there's something online tomorrow evening that Councillor Smith is on the panel, but I can't actually find out how to link onto that. But that would be really interesting. I've come across a full-time worker this week sleeping on a bench, and he said that he can't actually find anywhere to live. He's applied for places and just waiting for people to get back to him. So he's just on a bench, but he doesn't qualify for help because he is full-time and he's earning the money. He just actually can't find anywhere. So, you know, it seems to be, depending on where you are, there might be temporary accommodation somewhere, but not for others. I tried looking at some hotels for him today, but they're really expensive. So it's knowing where people can go for help. But overall, the report is really good. It'd be really lovely if we live, you know, like the report suggests that we do, but it's just underfunding, and I don't know how we're going to get to the end results. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Okay, that's great. Matt, over to you. Perhaps pick out some highlights of the report, maybe comment on some of those things that were
thanks,
raised.
Chair. I'll go through the main points of the report, and then I'll deal with some of these. So I'm going to look at this as a big opportunity and look at it more as the glass half full, following some of those comments that we just heard. So in July 2022, the System-Wide Strategy Development Board adopted the responsibility to produce the draft Integrated Care Northamptonshire, or the ICN strategy. Today, the Strategy Development Board recommend the draft ICN strategy to Cabinet. The draft ICN strategy sets out a long-term vision, ambitious outcomes framework, and the ICN operating model, and how they are interconnected to support successful integrated working. And this is a 10-year strategy. Throughout November 22, this draft ICN strategy was taken through the appropriate governance channels in all partner organisations to secure commitment and endorsement. The Integrated Care Partnership, the ICP, is where the ultimate approval will be made, and it received the final version of the ICN strategy at the meeting held last week on the 1st of December for review, approval and adoption. And I'm one of the co-chairs of the ICP, and I chaired the meeting last week. The high-level draft ICN strategy is the initial interim part 1 of the local strategy development work, which will continue to iterate and develop throughout 2023. Metrics in the form of the scorecard for each ambition are currently in development, and although don't form part of the final ICN strategy, will help inform the delivery plans included in the health and wellbeing strategy and the ICB 5-year joint forwarded plan. The WNC corporate strategy will be further enhanced to demonstrate WNC's commitment to the delivery of the ICN strategy. And I clearly see there are huge opportunities in relation to WNC services working to the local area partnerships, or the LAP footprints. The community engagement framework included in the draft ICN strategy, which is on page 33, sets out the approach that will be taken to ensure the engagement and feedback is undertaken throughout 2023. It is being led by the ICP Communication and Engagement Group, which is being established to develop the ongoing engagement and communication activities relating to the ICN strategy. So I won't go through all the recommendations, but just note at 3.4 that I think we just need to change one slightly because it talks about the meeting happening in the future tense, but it was the ICP did meet last week on the 1st of December. Finally, I'd like to add that I'm really proud of the work and contribution made by West Northampton Council in helping to develop this strategy. I've heard Stuart comment a number of times that we've been instrumental in developing the strategy, especially around the 10 Live Your Best Life ambitions, and the fact that our logo on page 10 of the document is rightfully first among the 24 enthusiastic and committed partners. And I would like to thank Julie Curtis for her excellent work on behalf of WNC. Earlier today, we had another very good meeting of our DSN4 lap, and the Northampton N4 lap meets again on Thursday. In the new year, we are planning to stand up the other laps across West Northamptonshire, but not before we've planned and resourced them properly. We now have the plan, and the challenge, as has been put this evening, is now the doing. I can give everybody assurance that I will be doing everything I can to be pushing for impact and outcomes from now on. And I'm very pleased to recommend this strategy to Cabinet. So I'll just pick up on some of the points, Chair. There was a lot there, but I think overall we've just got to bear in mind that this is a 10-year plan. It's a 10-year strategy, and it's a very high-level document. And out of that, we've got a lot of the work running right down into local area partnerships, and that's where we're going to make the difference. And the point to me is very well made that it's a very nice document. It could be sat on a shelf and nothing happened. But I'm certainly, that's certainly not what the partnership wants, what I want. And we've got to make sure that we do demonstrate impact, and that is the biggest challenge. And I certainly take that challenge. Sally talked about outcomes, and I think I just covered that there. Councillor Humphreys, I think the Health and Wellbeing Board forum earlier was very good. I've heard very good reports about it, and a part of the feeling that I'm picking up from the system is that it does feel better than things that have gone before, from things like the STP that tried to do a sort of similar thing. But to me, the key to this is how it runs right from strategic level right down into our communities and back up again. And that's how we as local members can get enthused. I think there's lots of enthusiasm at the laps, and it's a real way that we can identify with it. The Live Your Best Life tenants are very comprehensive, and that's been purposely done. I know Stuart had a big part of this, but the clever bit is the reach that has into other organisations and how they can adapt different parts of those tenants, if you like, to guide their own corporate strategies. Councillor Roberts made some points. I agree with some of them, and I disagree with some of them as well. The funding points, we do live in a world where funding is always going to be an issue. Budgets are always going to be an issue. We've got to do the best, but the best we can with what we've got to do with it. The best thing about this is the collective will of that whole partnership to be working in a much more integrated way than I think we've not seen before. I don't agree with the privatisation point. I don't think that's particularly irrelevant. And again, this is a high-level strategic document, and the points around alternative provision and send will fall out of the different strands running into the education parts that will be included in the strategy. Danielle makes a point about partnership, diversity, fair points. The voluntary sector hugely involved with this. Russell Rolfe, who's the CEO of Voluntary Impact Northamptonshire, has been instrumental in part of this. They've been partners with this, and Russell mentioned today that they've been instrumental in and successfully been awarded £450,000 to help support the voluntary sector and how they're going to engage with this. So that's huge, and a big point was made as a part of that. Part of that award of that grant is that our case was really, really strong, and that reach across into the voluntary, across the statutory partners as well. The education point about colleges will be picked up, and I know the colleges are involved in. We've got the Anchor Institution part of the ICS strategy, and they're involved, so they're at the table. So all of these points that have been made are very good points, but these people are at the table with us. So again, we're working much better, much more closely than before. Wendy's points lovely on paper. I take that point, but I think I made the point that the challenge is the doing bit, and that's what we've got to get behind now. Mental health and the different points in the different areas is something I think we can focus in the laps. Mental health was brought up in today's lap as well. So there are some points that the data will point us in a direction to. The data was referred to earlier. We've got some excellent data drilling right down into all of our different areas. So I can talk all night about it, so I better stop. But, you know, it's an excellent piece of work. I totally accept the challenge that it looks good on paper, but we've got to, you know, deliver outcomes, and that's what we're all about and we're all focused on. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matt. That was great. Fiona, you want to make some comments?
Yes, I agree. This is a brilliant piece of work and looks really good, interesting and easy to read and digest. But I just want to say, I've been in this area of work for some time now, as some of you will know. And actually, I would actually put my hand on my heart and say, in the small ways that I've been involved in all of this work, I've never come across an area where our lead member and our director are so passionate about this that they actually put forward the good parts of this at every meeting we have. And I think that what Matt said earlier, that he is actually, along with Stuart, got the passion to drive this forward. I have seen it and I think it is going to work and it will happen. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Fiona. Any further comments at all? Questions, observations on this? No? In which case, draw your attention to the recommendations, as always at section 3, with that one proviso, the change of recommendation 3.4, which is probably more about note the adoption of the strategy at the partnership on the 1st of December. But with that exception, we're signing up, I think, to those recommendations. Is that agreed? Thank you very much indeed. Takes us on to item 9. This is procurement of a WNC fleet management contract. It's about fleet management. It is about maintenance. It is not necessarily about procurement of vehicles and so on. Separate strategies look at electrification and a variety of other things. This one is, of course, with Malcolm. First of all, we have 2 speakers, actually. We have Councillor Beardsworth and then Councillor Randall. Sally, over to you.
I'm going to stay here for quickness, Chair, because all I would say is anything we buy in the future, let's look towards electric.
Yeah, agree.
Okay. That's
Thank
all.
you. Thank you very much indeed. Wendy, did you want to? Same point, was it? Yeah, great. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much indeed. In which case, Malcolm, over to you.
Well, thanks very much for those couple of questions or comments, I think, more than anything else. If you look at the 2 comments at 2.3 and 5.6 on the report, it says precisely that, really. That's where the technology allows us. I don't think we're all of a mind there. If there's any worries about that. So this paper really is all about just getting the okay to go ahead and to get this fleet management contract in place. Taking very much on board what the 2 comments I've just heard. Thanks, Chair. There's not much more to say, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. It's pretty straightforward, really, isn't it? But does anybody else have any questions, comments, observations on this one? No? Okay. In which case, as always, recommendation is at section 3, recommended that approval is given to procure a new fleet management contract. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Takes us on to item 10, which is home care services commissioning intentions, including extension to existing framework. This one is with Matt. First of all, we have 3 speakers, which are in this order: Councillor Beardsworth, Councillor Roberts and Councillor Randall. Sally, you again. Feel free to stay there, by the way, Sally, if you want
It's
to.
quicker. We want to get finished tonight. I know you do.
Great.
So basically, thank goodness, a really common sense approach to delivering this. I'm absolutely delighted with this because we've got people travelling here and there all over the county at the moment to deliver care to people. And this, to me, is far more sensible, putting people in areas. You get continuity of care from a team. You also have less travel time, which is, people don't often get paid for travel time. And to actually do this, I'm absolutely delighted with this report. And I think it'll go in a long way to improve the service we give to people in our care, and a far more cost-effective one as well. So that's, I'm not
Brilliant.
going to go on it anymore. That's praise indeed.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your comments, Sally. Thank you very much indeed. Next speaker then is Councillor Roberts. Emma?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I wholeheartedly support the kind of the concept of this report and the references around economy for scale, etc. I was delighted that it referenced the anti-poverty strategy. I've moaned on and on and on about that for ages, and how decisions impact or complement that strategy. A couple of points around it. I was concerned that insourcing is just simply ruled out because there's financial issues. There's little rationale that's been given. Financial impacts are well known of insourcing processes. However, the long-term benefits don't seem to have been considered here. That may well have been considered in the background, but it's not demonstrated within the contents of the report. And it doesn't tell me that it's been explored, particularly in the rural areas, given the increased cost of care in those areas. I think at page 69 in table 2, there might be an error in the numbers. On lines Daventry 1, Daventry 2, South Northampton 2. Those numbers add up to 43, but the numbers in the next 3 columns only add up to 33. I think Daventry 2 should be 3, not 13, possibly. But so I just thought we might want to correct that detail. We've been talking about this action and this procurement work since June 21, the first cabinet meeting that we had, and I spoke at that meeting, was worried about how long this was going to go on for. It's obviously going on for a very long time. I welcome the report, but we can't possibly delay this any longer. It cannot happen. So where it says it must not happen in here, that's got to be an absolutely nailed on position in the report. I like the tone of everything that's here. I like the way that it looks at, but I'm not sure that it goes into enough detail around economy of scale and how we actually make that money that we will be providing to those smaller number of providers reach the pockets of the workers. What I don't want to see is a rate increase we reduce the number of providers, we increase their rate, but actually the provider receives the profit and not the individual. So having a new framework that has an ethical care charter position right at the heart of it, and I will hold the director to this, because when I asked this question at Cabinet in June 21, specifically said that we could look at that process as part of the programme. So I hope that the director and the cabinet member will do that. And then finally, on the map, I've worked on the basis that that's looking at the current procurement system and where we map those areas of care. So I'm just wondering if when we do the new procurement system, we'll look at care zones that are based on the local area partnerships. I'm getting a nod, so that's the case. Excellent. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Emma. Finally, Councillor Randall, Wendy, you okay? That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much. In which case, over to Matt, just to pick out a few highlights and maybe pick up on some of the comments made.
Yeah, thank you. Pleased to propose this paper to Cabinet, and I have to say, I think it's one of the best Cabinet reports, best written Cabinet reports I've presented, and I'm going to pick out the name of the author, which is Paul Smith, and I'm going to drop him a line because I think it really makes for a compelling narrative as to why we need to do this. Lots of contextual data, and I think it's an excellent report. I have got a bit of a script, but I won't go through it all because we're getting through things. The biggest point I will make is that financially at 4.10, it states the total spend on home care is circa £350,000 per week, which is absolutely huge, which is around £18 million a year. So it is a huge amount of money. We've got a best value obligation to ensure, a spend of this magnitude is meeting the needs of the people who are receiving the care of this in this way. Currently, there are 44 different independent home care providers signed up to the framework. We've got 2 tiers. The report explains how that all works. The changing of our zones into the Live Your Best Life local area partnerships is a real sensible approach to streamline and frame this whole sort of exercise around that, given what we've just talked about in the last paper I had. So I think it's as some of the comments have said, it's a sensible thing. Sally said praise indeed. So I'm very happy with that. Emma makes the point about the rate increases and getting the money to work, as that's where we want the money to go, and I'm sure there's a process that will enable us to get an insight and to be transparent about this. So the report, it does talk about a short-term extension to the existing contract while this is sorted out, and hopefully we can crack on and get on with this as soon as possible. But I think it's a very good report, as I've said, and I don't know if Stuart wanted to pick up on any other technical points, because it is quite a technical exercise that we're going through. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Roberts, I'm more than happy to take you through some of the background details in relation to the challenges around insourcing, because it's not just around the cost implications attached to some of that stuff. What I would say is thank you for people's kind regards pertaining to this paper. From a council perspective, I think this will be our biggest procurement that we have done to date. If you think about the thousands of care workers who currently deliver support for these 1,000 people, we're talking about something quite significant here. So it's going to be vital that we have absolute assurance that we make sure that there's continuity care that flows through some of this stuff. When you think about the economies of scale, it's also about the levels of efficiency that we will get by moving to providers orientated around our local area partnerships and a much smaller group of providers. So as we stand here today, we could have a street in the centre of Northampton where we might have in that street 7 different providers zigzagging across each other, picking up work. Because although we've got the zones, when the zonal provider hasn't got enough capacity, one of the spot provider steps in. So the whole notion of reorientating this is where we will eke out some of those efficiencies, because it is absolutely within our interest to do everything that we can to have a higher hourly rate that enables these providers to recruit the capacity we require. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Stuart. That's very helpful. Any other comments at all on this? Questions? No? Okay, that's great. In which case, as always, the recommendations are at section 1, on this occasion, specifically section 3.1. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement to the recommendations? Is that agreed? That's great. Thank you. Takes us on to item 11. This is good news. Again, a sustainability related project, extended photovoltaic system for One Angel Square. Item 11. Let's see, we've one speaker, Councillor Beardsworth. Sally, comment from you on this?
Just a very quick comment. It should have been done when it was built, and I'm very, very pleased it's being done now.
Yep.
And can I make a comment on 12 and 13 that I'm really, really glad that we're going to have a better systems for better working.
Okay, yes, is that all you wanted to say on those next 2 items?
Yes.
Great, no, I would agree with you as well. That's
Yes.
fantastic, right,
Thank
we'll
you.
cross off the list there, that's brilliant. In which case we hand over to you, Malcolm, I think on this one.
That's fine. Well, we'll start off with a bit of amusing. I think it starts with the crows on the roof with the pebbles and breaking the glass. And so it was a maintenance requirement. So it's got looked into. Anyway, the upshot of it is we're going to put the cells on the roof, as you all know, is a cost saving, 4-year payback. It's a green thing to do. And the crows can no longer break the windows. That's about it, Chair. Thanks.
Yes. Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, I think universally welcomed this. Nobody else have any further comments at all on it? No, in which case, as always, recommendations at section 3. And again, I'll just ask you, yes, please confirm your agreement to the recommendations. Is that agreed? Great, thank you. Takes us on to item 12. This one is with Fiona, procurement and implementation of children's social care case management system. As Sally's already said, it's just a way of working more efficiently, I think. On this one, we had two speakers. One was Sally, who's made her comments. Councillor Randall has had to leave to get away from the meeting. So we're straight over to you, Fiona, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that we all know these days that the best way for efficiencies and outcomes of all our services is to have the right sort of computer system in place that gives our staff the right information that they need at a touch of a button. And hopefully this is what this will do for our children's services. So the reason for this report, the contract for NCT to provide children's social care states that the councils must provide a case management system to operate effectively and to keep necessary records. This was also highlighted if you read in our Ofsted report that we recently had. The current contractual arrangements with OLM for the provision of Care First end in January 2025. Not having a system would stop NCT from meeting statutory requirements. So this is not an option. There is no provision for the current NCT case management system to be extended beyond January 2025, and so a new procurement must be launched. The costs of the system will be borne by WNC and NNC at an estimated cost of 2.8 million, split by the previously agreed percentages. WNC's share of the costs, 56%, equate to 1.573 million over the next 4 financial years to implement the system. It's been agreed between the two councils that procurement and technical support will be delivered by WNC. NNC have agreed to contribute the costs of this. This allows us to ensure the outcome of the procurement and manage risks often associated with IT procurement, for example, increasing costs, delays, etc. Our Chief Executive, Anna Earnshaw, will chair an NCT case management and fostering system programme board. The recommendations are that the Cabinet agrees to proceed with the replacement of the case management system and to delegate oversight of the programme as set out in the report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Fiona. Any other questions or comments at all? No, in which case Fiona's just directed our attention to the recommendations. Can you just confirm your agreement, please? Is that agreed? That's great. Thank you very much indeed. And takes us on to something somewhat similar. Item 13. We only had Councillor Randall as a speaker who's now left the meeting. So on this one, we're straight over to you, Malcolm.
Well, this is a similar story to that which Fiona's just talked about. We're talking about a lot of systems. They're all itemised in the report, and putting them all together to make a better system that would improve the accuracy. So it's the current system, but easily open to mistakes. And if you read through the report, you'll see the vastness of that particular area. So it's all about a system. I think Sally summed it up quite well, really, before she shot off. And it's a better way of working. And that's what I guess quite a lot of this evening's been all about. So, Chair, I'll just leave it at that. Any other comments?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Malcolm. No other comments, queries at all? Oh, sorry, Adam was going to make a comment.
Just to say, Chairman, that it's great to see transformation and unitary in action and down on paper. It's so important that we get all of these areas working off the same systems that organisations such as ours work on their data. And so moving forward, we need to see this happening across all areas, and we will be. So very positive news, and I'd just like to sing the praises of the Revs and Bens team as well. They were consistently high-performing team. Did a very important job in getting in the money that we need to be able to provide our services. So long may that continue.
Very positive comments, and I totally agree with you, Adam. Thank you very much. So, in which case, as always, the recommendations are at section 3. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement, please? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. That then takes us on to item 14, Northamptonshire Safeguarding Adults Board annual reports, item 14. Yes, so we have just 2 speakers remaining. First of all, Councillor Roberts, then Councillor Stone. So Emma, over to you.
I'll keep it brief, Chair, because I'll deal with some of the communications at the board itself, because I think that's the place to address the changes or outcomes. But we're showing WNC and NNC as part of this report, and this is where I thought Cabinet could perhaps make a change, is that if we're going to show the work they're doing, then we should probably compare the performance of them as well within the Safeguarding Adults report, because that might help improvement in each authority. We can only improve if we admit where our failings are, can't we? So I think if we compare those performances, it'd be good. On page 17, there was lots of statistics that concern me, but one really did. It said 87% of inquiries had the provider as the cause of the risk. So when people were reporting an issue for an adult, it was the provider that they felt were causing that problem. I think that's a statistic this Cabinet and all councillors should be really concerned about, particularly when we're looking at the people who provide service for our vulnerable adults. So the rest I'll pick up at the board itself, Chair. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emma. So Councillor Stone, Danielle.
Thank you, Chair. I think the overwhelming question for me here is, are our vulnerable adults safe in Northamptonshire? And if they are, and we hope they are, how do we know? So I think I don't have any way of measuring whether having nearly 4,000 concerns raised is a good thing or a bad thing, or how that compares within the region or nationally. I think that might be helpful for us to understand. And the thing I'm worried about, and I'm worried about it with children's as well, is what happen? Do we have enough resource to do the assessments, and do we have enough resource to follow things through? And then beyond that, I want to know more about who these vulnerable adults are and what the pattern of the concerns are. So, for example, you know, if it's white men over the age of 70, is there a concern? Is there a pattern to that concern? And I think we need to know that, actually, so that we can really understand what needs to be done. And I want to know what ethnicity differences there are, and how cultural and language issues are dealt with. Because the worry is that people who've got barriers are not having their concerns brought forward. Again, I'm with Councillor Roberts, I'm really worried about the providers of care and having all those, that percentage being reported as a concern. And I'd like to know what is being done about that. OP alloy, can we not just know about it, but know about the impact of it? I think that would be useful. I'm really concerned that there's no mention in the report about a national phenomena that we all know about now, which is racism and misogyny in the police force and the incidents of domestic abuse in the police force. And I think we need some reassurances, because this area of work, we rely very heavily on our partnership with the police. We need to understand if any of those issues are affecting our partnership with the police and affecting policing across Northamptonshire. So I think we need some reassurances about that. I'm quite interested in the FLARE project. I think that might be really, really useful, especially when people like me are having to address some of those issues to do with catcalling and wolf whistling with young women. I was just asked recently by my hairdressers to tackle a group of men putting scaffolding up near their building. They were catcalling a little 14-year-old girl who was brought in to sweep the floor, you know, and they weren't amused when I went to talk to them. But having something like this available, I think might be very helpful, because I could have got the young girl to report it herself, couldn't I? Reference here is made to sex work. And again, I think we need more detail, you know, the sex workers profile. I'd like to know what it is. I'd like to know what it is, not just out of interest, but because if we know, then within our communities and community organisations, we can help support really vulnerable people. And again, we need to know the pattern of what is going on. I raised a question recently with the safeguarding team about women being coerced to provide sex for rent. It's a national phenomena. And I was told it isn't a phenomena in West Northants. Well, that can't be true. It can't be true. And so I think we need to go a bit deeper into what exactly is happening as a result of poverty in our communities and that kind of coercive behaviour. I think this is a really good instance where we need equalities impact assessments. One of the areas that I'm really worried about is what's happening with refugee women and girls. They often are arriving without a safe passage, so they've made their own way here. I know quite a lot of those women and girls will have been sexually exploited on the way or abused or whatever. They are being housed in mixed supported housing or in mixed hotels. I think we need to be looking at the provision of safe spaces for those women and those girls. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Matt, do you want to make a few comments
Yeah,
about the
well,
report and then perhaps pick up some of those
I'm gonna
issues?
take my
raised?
time.
Yeah.
With this one this time. Right, thank you. So Northamptonshire Safeguarding Adults Board Annual Report 21-22. The report has been developed from contributions from the 4 statutory partners and was reviewed and approved by another Northamptonshire Safeguarding Adults Board Strategic Board on the 6th of October 2022. So the Care Act 24 places Safeguarding Adults Board on a statutory footing with a requirement to produce and publicise an annual report. This is the second annual report received by West Northamptonshire Council and is overseen by Stuart as the chair for the 21-22 year. The chair of the board rotates on a yearly basis and is currently being chaired by David Watts, Stuart's equivalent in Northamptonshire Council. Instead of an independent chair, which has been the case in the past, the board has an independent scrutineer, Jane Geraghty, and I think this arrangement works pretty well. Stuart, like I, has been keen to ensure the board is as effective as possible. We've got good contributions. Emma sits on the board as well, and in Emma's way is always challenging. The report highlights the progress and achievements made during the period and also advises the future developments for West Northamptonshire Council for the year ahead to safeguarding adults in the West Northamptonshire area. The format of the report aligns with the NSAB strategic plan and includes quantitative and qualitative evidence, key messages and impact of activities relate to raising community awareness and of how to report safeguarding concerns via the #ReportIt campaign, to provide multi-agency training opportunities and learning from safeguarding adult reviews for frontline workers via the Week of Learning, to developing a new dashboard to provide analysis of safeguarding data to understand the reasons for safeguarding concerns, to undertake safeguarding adult reviews when an adult in our area dies as a result of abuse or neglect, to work in partnership with local authorities and local health watch to understand adults' experiencing of the safeguarding process, to provide scrutiny and challenge regarding the effectiveness of safeguarding arrangements across the partnership, to develop closer working arrangements with the voluntary and community sector assembly, safeguarding children's partnership and community safety partnerships, and to review how well agencies are working together to effectively safeguard adults at risk of harm and abuse via self-case audit activities. The report I think, is very comprehensive. It's a good report. The points picked up, there was a lot to do around performance, and we could maybe take that suggestion away. Danielle's point and that point around the provider course of risk, and maybe as this was brought up at Cabinet, we could formally seek some assurance around some of these areas, perhaps through Stuart and David as the chair, that these were the thoughts of Cabinet, and ask for some responses. Danielle raised lots of issues from ethnicity and the national police issue you referred to, refugees, sex workers, etc. So I think, again, we can take those away and get some assurance on and some points back to Danielle on those questions, if that's okay. But other than that, I think it's a very good report and I'm happy to recommend it to Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Matt. Adam, you had some comments, I think.
Yeah, just on the specific issue of the police and the national issues at play. We had a meeting of the police, fire and crime panel last week, and this issue did arise. The Commissioner gave some very reassuring answers. Labour do have representation on that panel. It's the ideal forum to challenge the Commissioner on performance in this area and any other, and I'd encourage not just the Labour member, but all members involved to do so. I think sadly at the last meeting, the Labour member for the West wasn't there, but those from the North did challenge the Commissioner on that point, and he outlined Northamptonshire Police's improved performance on representation within the force, and also the positive performance on the problematic issues that Councillor Stone outlines versus the national picture, where there are clearly wider and more significant problems. I think that, in tandem with the improved performance on fighting crime, puts our police force in a good place.
Thank you. That's helpful. And David, I think, were you going to add comments to that?
Well, I think Adam's covered most of it. Just the last thing is the Flare app. It's an app where you can report harassment on the streets and things, and then enables the police to then build a better picture of what's going on where. But happy to share more with you and help wherever possible.
Jolly good. Thank you, everybody. No further comments at all on this one? No, in which case the recommendations at section 3.1. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement to the recommendations? That agreed? That's terrific. Thank you. Our next item we would intend to take in private. We don't do that very often. It's only when the benefit of sharing the information publicly is outweighed by the potential disadvantage to the taxpayer. We don't have any members of the press or public present. Nevertheless, I would propose under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that if the public were present, it would be likely that exempt information under paragraph 3 of part 1 of the schedule 12A to the Act would be disclosed to them. Can I just get you to confirm your agreement to going into a public session, a private session?